Ever typed a document or sent an email or streamed a movie? Of course you have. But
Yeah.
have you ever stopped to think what life would be like without all of that?
Right.
Today we're going on a journey to a world where the computer was never invented,
Okay.
and we're going to use your provided articles, historical analyses, and a bit of speculative fiction to explore just how different our world would be.
It's fascinating to think about, right? I mean, it's easy to jump to like, oh, I miss my smartphone or I miss the internet, but it goes so much deeper than that.
Yeah.
We're talking about a fundamental shift in how everything works, from global politics down to how we interact in our local communities.
Absolutely. So let's unplug from the digital worlds for a second.
Okay.
And imagine a world where politics is a sea of paperwork.
Right.
Government buildings overflowing with files,
Oh, yeah.
records, meticulously handwritten, and every process just crawling at a snail's pace because there's no digital system to streamline it.
Yeah.
It's like taking a time machine back to an era of telegrams and snail mail.
And that slow pace would have a ripple effect on everything.
Oh, absolutely.
Policymaking would be incredibly slow.
Yeah.
International relations would rely on face-to-face meetings or diplomats carrying sensitive information across oceans.
Oh.
Think about how long it would take to respond to a global crisis.
Oh, my gosh.
Or coordinate disaster relief efforts.
Right. And forget about those targeted political ads that follow you around online.
Exactly.
In this world, elections would be fought on the ground with town hall meetings and pamphlets being the main weapons of choice. Can you imagine a world where you actually had to read through a candidate's pamphlet to make an informed decision?
It's a stark contrast to the 24/7 news cycle and instant information that we're used to.
Right.
This world would operate on a completely different timescale.
Yeah.
And it would have a profound impact on how governments function, how policies are made, and how citizens engage in the political process.
So let's step into the shoes of a student in this world.
Okay.
No more Googling for answers or submitting assignments online.
Right.
Instead, libraries would be the central hubs of knowledge.
Yeah.
Imagine spending hours sifting through stacks of books, relying on the Dewey Decimal System
Oh, yeah.
to guide you to the right information.
Yeah.
Research would be a much more tactile and time-consuming endeavor.
And the lack of online learning would create a huge disparity in access to education.
Oh, huge.
Particularly for people in remote or underprivileged communities.
Yeah.
The global sharing of knowledge that we take for granted would be severely limited.
The workplace would also be drastically different.
Oh, yeah.
Remember that satisfying click-clack of typewriters?
I do.
Well, in this world, offices would be filled with them.
Oh, my gosh.
Imagine mountains of files, armies of clerks manually processing data, and everything moving at a much slower pace.
Think about the impact on businesses.
Huge.
Inventory management would involve meticulously updated handwritten ledgers.
Oh, wow. Accounting would likely rely on abacuses or other manual calculation tools.
Yeah.
Global trade would be hampered by the lack of efficient communication and data processing.
Yeah.
Scaling a business internationally would be an enormous challenge.
So in this world, local small businesses might actually have an advantage.
Yeah.
While large corporations would struggle to keep up without the digital tools we rely on for efficiency and scalability.
Now, it's fascinating to consider whether alternative technologies might have emerged to fill the void left by computers.
Right.
Could we have seen the development of incredibly advanced typewriters
Okay.
or incredibly complex abacuses?
Yeah.
Perhaps even elaborate pneumatic communication systems to transmit information.
It's an interesting thought.
Right.
Imagine a world where the peak of technology is a super sophisticated abacus.
It's almost humorous to think about.
It is.
But it highlights the incredible ingenuity that might have been channeled in different directions.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But even with these analog solutions,
it's important to remember that they would likely fall short of the efficiency and scalability of the digital systems we have today.
Totally.
Okay, let's get serious for a moment and talk about healthcare in a world without computers.
Right?
No more advanced imaging techniques, genetic research,
Right.
or disease modeling.
Yeah.
Even something as routine as a blood test would be slower and less accurate.
The implications are pretty staggering.
Oh, yeah.
We wouldn't have personalized medicine tailored to your genetic makeup.
Wow.
Diagnosing and treating diseases would rely on more traditional methods with potentially slower progress in medical research and treatment development.
It really makes you appreciate how much we rely on computers for our health and well-being.
It does.
But it's not just healthcare that would be affected.
Right.
Imagine a world without the internet.
Oh, wow.
No social media, instant messaging, or video calls.
Communication between countries would rely heavily on traditional mail telegraphs and radio.
Wow.
Globalization as we know it would be happening at a snail's pace.
No late-night chats with friends across the world.
Yep.
It would be back to pen pals and waiting weeks for a reply.
Exactly.
It really makes you think about how much the internet has revolutionized communication and shrunk our world.
Absolutely. The absence of that global interconnectedness would have far-reaching implications on everything, from scientific collaboration to cultural exchange.
Let's switch gears for a moment and talk about military strategy.
Okay.
In a world without computers, warfare would look radically different.
Definitely.
No more drones, satellites, or cyber warfare.
Exactly. Military operations would rely on traditional strategies and analog systems.
Wow.
Battlefield communication would depend on radios and handwritten messages,
Oh.
making coordination slow and vulnerable.
Yeah.
Forget about GPS-guided missiles or real-time intelligence from satellites.
It would be back to a more traditional form of warfare.
Yeah.
With a greater emphasis on human intelligence and physical maneuvering.
Right.
And the concept of cybersecurity as we know it wouldn't even exist. Instead, threats would focus on physical espionage and sabotage.
It's a fascinating thought experiment, isn't it?
It is.
To envision how the nature of conflict and defense would adapt and evolve in a world without the digital tools that have become so integral to modern warfare.
It really makes you think about how much technology has changed the landscape of warfare.
Yeah.
But what about our daily lives? Remember that feeling of being lost without your phone's GPS?
Oh, yeah.
Now imagine trying to navigate an entire city without it.
Right.
No Waze, no Google Maps.
Right.
Just a paper map and a lot of guesswork.
And air travel.
Oh, gosh.
It would be a much riskier and less efficient experience without computerized air traffic control systems.
Oh, wow.
Global shipping would rely on physical maps and human calculations, making international trade a much slower and more arduous process.
Okay, so earlier we talked about the potential environmental benefits of a world without computers.
Right.
But now I'm thinking about all the paper we'd be using.
Oh, yeah.
If everything had to be done manually, wouldn't that have a huge impact on deforestation?
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
There's a definite paradox there.
Right.
On the one hand, the absence of energy-hungry data centers and all the electronic waste we produce could be a good thing for the environment.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, the sheer volume of paper we'd need for everything from the government records to business transactions to personal communication could lead to massive deforestation.
It's a trade-off that forces us to consider the complex relationship between technology and the environment.
For sure.
It makes you think about how even seemingly positive changes can have unintended consequences.
Yeah.
But let's end this part of our deep dive on a lighter note.
Okay.
What would we do for fun in a world without computers?
Entertainment would look very different.
Oh, yeah.
Film and television would rely on practical effects with no CGI to create fantastical worlds.
Wow.
Music production would use analog instruments. And genres like electronic dance music, which are entirely dependent on computers, wouldn't exist.
Can you imagine blockbuster movies without CGI or musicians playing live instead of using synthesizers?
It's a different kind of entertainment landscape for sure.
It is.
And who knows, maybe some pretty cool innovations would have emerged from those limitations.
So we've covered a lot of ground in this first part of our deep dive.
We have.
We've seen how the absence of computers would impact everything from politics and education to healthcare and entertainment. It's been a whirlwind tour through a world that is both familiar and strangely alien.
It's a stark reminder of just how pervasive computers have become in our lives.
Yeah.
They shape the way we live, work, and interact with the world around us.
Absolutely.
And by imagining a world without them, we gain a deeper appreciation for both the immense benefits and the potential drawbacks of this technology that has become so deeply intertwined with our lives.
It's mind-blowing when you think about it. And as we move into the next part of our deep dive, we'll delve even deeper into specific areas where the absence of computers would have a truly profound impact. Stay tuned.
All right. You know, while we were discussing that world without computers before, the thing that struck me was just how much we take for granted.
What's that?
Just the ease with which we can start a business these days.
Yeah, it's true. Today, it seems like almost anyone with an idea and a little bit of hustle can set up an online shop, build a website,
Right.
use social media to reach customers, all of that.
Exactly. But in our computerless world,
Right.
all of that would be impossible.
Wow.
Entrepreneurs would face significant hurdles just to get their ideas off the ground.
So I imagine advertising would rely heavily on traditional methods like print ads, billboards, even just word of mouth.
And think about the behind-the-scenes aspects.
Okay.
Market analysis, customer databases, supply chain management. All of these crucial business functions would have to be done manually, which would be incredibly time-consuming and prone to errors.
Wow. So while local brick-and-mortar stores might still thrive, any business that relies on e-commerce or digital marketing would be out of luck.
Right, and it's not just about the practical challenges. The very nature of innovation would be different.
Interesting.
The kind of tech startups that drive so much of the modern economy simply wouldn't exist.
Right.
No app development, no online platforms, no software companies.
Yeah.
Entrepreneurship would be focused on tangible products and services, potentially leading to a much slower pace of business evolution.
It's like rewinding the clock on the entire entrepreneurial landscape.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about communication and media.
Okay.
In this world, we'd be back to relying on newspapers, radio, and television for our news and entertainment.
And information would travel much slower.
Oh, yeah.
Instead of instant news updates and viral videos,
Right.
we'd be waiting for the morning paper or the evening news broadcast. Media companies would rely on physical distribution and live broadcasts, reaching far fewer people than they do today.
No social media either.
Can you imagine?
Can you imagine a world without the constant stream of opinions, news, and updates that we get from platforms like Twitter and Facebook?
It's almost mind-boggling. Public discourse would be completely different, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Without social media to shape narratives and drive conversations, how would public opinion even form and spread?
It raises some interesting questions about how social and political movements would organize and mobilize without the tools of online activism.
Right.
And how would we stay connected with friends and family who live far away?
We'd probably rely on letters and phone calls.
Wow.
Which would definitely make staying in touch a more deliberate and less frequent act.
Speaking of deliberate acts, let's talk about scientific progress.
Okay.
Remember, in this world, scientists wouldn't have computers to help them analyze data model experiments or predict outcomes.
That's right. Fields like physics, astronomy, and biology would face immense challenges in processing complex data.
Right.
Breakthroughs that we take for granted today, like mapping the human genome,
Wow.
or understanding the universe's origins, might remain out of reach.
And global scientific collaboration would be incredibly difficult without digital databases and journals.
Definitely.
Researchers would have to physically share their findings, which could take months or even years.
It's like taking a giant step backward in terms of the speed and scope of scientific discovery.
Wow.
Now let's shift gears and talk about the military.
Okay.
Remember, in this world, there are no drones, no satellites, no cyber warfare.
So what would military strategy look like without all of those technological advantages?
Well, communication on the battlefield would rely on radios and written messages, which are much slower and less secure than the digital systems we have today.
Right.
And forget about precision strikes with GPS-guided missiles.
Oh, gosh.
Air power would be much less effective without advanced targeting systems. It would be a return to a more traditional form of warfare.
And what about the whole concept of cybersecurity?
It wouldn't exist as we know it.
Right.
Threats would focus on physical espionage and sabotage rather than digital breaches.
Okay.
Intelligence gathering would rely on human agents and traditional surveillance methods.
It's fascinating to consider how the nature of conflict and defense would have adapted in such a radically different technological landscape.
It really is.
Yeah.
Now let's bring it back to everyday life.
Okay.
Think about something as simple as getting around.
Okay.
In a world without computers, we wouldn't have GPS navigation or computerized traffic management systems.
No more ways to guide us through rush hour traffic or Google Maps to help us find that new restaurant.
And air travel would be much more challenging and riskier
Yeah.
without computerized air traffic control systems.
Right.
Global shipping would rely on physical maps and human calculations, making international trade a much slower and more arduous process.
You know, earlier we talked about the potential environmental benefits of a world without computers.
Huh?
But now I'm thinking about all the paper we'd be using if everything had to be done manually.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that have a huge impact on deforestation?
You're absolutely right. There's a definite paradox there.
Yeah.
On the one hand, the absence of energy-hungry data centers and all the electronic waste we produce could be a good thing for the environment.
Right.
But on the other hand, the sheer volume of paper we'd need for everything from government records to business transactions to personal communication could lead to massive deforestation.
It's a reminder that even seemingly positive changes can have unintended consequences.
It is.
And it's a great example of the complex relationship between technology and the environment.
It also highlights the importance of considering the full picture when we evaluate the impact of technology on our world.
Yeah.
It's not always a simple equation of good versus bad.
Well said. And before we wrap up this part of our deep dive,
Okay.
let's take a moment to appreciate the things that wouldn't exist in this world without computers.
Okay.
Things that we often take for granted, like video games, for instance.
Oh, wow.
Can you imagine a world without them?
No.
No immersive virtual worlds, no online multiplayer battles, no complex storylines played out on a screen.
It would be a completely different entertainment landscape.
You would.
Board games and card games would probably be much more popular.
Right.
And I imagine people would spend more time outdoors or engaging in other hobbies that don't involve screens.
And what about music?
Oh, yeah.
They wouldn't have electronic music genres like techno or EDM.
Right.
Music production would rely on analog instruments and recording techniques.
Imagine a world where every musical performance is live and every recording is made using analog equipment.
Wow.
It would be a very different listening experience.
You know, as we explore this world without computers, I'm struck by how much we take for granted the things that technology has brought into our lives.
It's easy to get caught up in the negative aspects, like the potential for distraction or the erosion of privacy, but it's important to remember the incredible advancements that computers have made possible in everything from healthcare to communication to entertainment.
It's a reminder to use this technology thoughtfully and responsibly, to harness its power for good while mitigating its potential downsides.
Absolutely. And as we continue our deep dive in the next part, we'll explore some of the more philosophical and cultural implications of a world without computers. Stay with us.
So we've spent this deep dive exploring a world stripped of the digital part, a world where the computer was never invented. And it's fascinating how the absence of something so pervasive can make you realize just how deeply it's woven into every aspect of our lives.
Yeah, it's like taking a core sample of modern society and finding silicon chips in every layer.
What?
We've talked about the practical impacts on things like politics, healthcare, even warfare, but now I kind of want to shift gears a bit and
Yeah, I too.
talk about something a bit more abstract.
Okay.
What about the cultural and philosophical implications of a world without computers? How would our understanding of things like knowledge, intelligence, even art be different?
That's where it gets really interesting, right? Because without computers, our very concept of artificial intelligence would be radically different.
Oh, totally.
It wouldn't be about complex algorithms and machine learning. It might refer to a particularly skilled chess player or a brilliant strategist.
Brilliant strategist, exactly. So instead of fearing robots taking over the world, we might be marveling at human ingenuity.
And what about art?
Oh, yeah.
Think about all the digital art forms that wouldn't exist.
Right.
No electronic music, no CGI in movies, no video games.
We might see a renaissance of traditional art forms like painting, sculpture, classical music, or perhaps entirely new forms of art would emerge, forms we can't even conceive of because our imaginations are so shaped by the digital world.
It's kind of exciting to think about the creative potential that might be unleashed if we weren't so reliant on computers for artistic expression. And then there's human connection.
Yeah.
Without social media and instant messaging, wouldn't we be forced to interact in more meaningful ways?
Potentially. We'd have to rely on face-to-face conversations, phone calls, handwritten letters.
Right.
It might lead to deeper, more deliberate interactions, but it would also mean a less interconnected world.
Yeah.
We wouldn't have access to the diverse perspectives and global communities that the internet provides.
It's like trading a global village for a network of smaller, more self-contained communities.
Right.
It's a trade-off that makes you think about the balance between depth and breadth of connection.
Absolutely. And it raises questions about how those smaller communities would interact with each other.
Yeah.
Would we see more regionalism, more distinct cultural identities?
Right.
Would globalization happen at a much slower pace? I mean, it's fascinating to consider how the absence of computers would reshape not just our technologies, but our very understanding of the world and our place in it.
This thought experiment Imagining a world without computers has really shown us how profoundly this technology has influenced every aspect of our lives.
It really has.
It's shaped our societies, our economies, our cultures, and even our philosophies.
It's also made us realize how much we take for granted.
Really?
The ability to access information instantly,
Yeah.
connect with people across the globe, and create and share in ways that were unimaginable just a few generations ago.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, let's take a moment to appreciate the incredible power of computers.
Yes.
They've brought about challenges, yes,
Of course.
but also incredible opportunities.
Right.
It's up to us to use this technology wisely, to harness its potential for good, while being mindful of its limitations.
I think that's a great takeaway.
The next time you open your laptop or scroll through your phone, remember this journey we've taken together.
Yeah.
Remember the world that could have been, and appreciate the world. We have a world shaped by the invention of the computer. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.